Yo, all right. Welcome to the first episode, guys, of the Full Count Fantasy Podcast. Like I said, I'm going to try to do three of these, and this one just kept getting pushed back. I wanted to get it started like right after week 6, but it kind of makes sense to start it now because I'm going to do three of these during the season. This is, I think, we're about a third of the way through the season at this point. So, now's a better time than any. And I want to try to keep it like around 20, 25 minutes, maybe 30. It's just going to be me and strictly audio. But I want to hit the few topics I talked about in the group me. And we're going to, quickly start it off with a little bit of an opening. Again, pop this on whenever you guys have a chance. Maybe on your way to work, maybe on your lunch break, or even, whenever you guys have a chance. But I wanted to recap with this video the preseason, going into a little bit of where we were at in 2019 to now. I want to take a look at draft. I want to take a look at the draft games, winter meetings, everything going up into the draft. And then quick review of the first 6 weeks. Again, this is just my take on things, guys. You guys know how I do it. It's just my opinion, and I'm not talking shit about anybody. I'm just going to give, my thoughts on things, and hopefully excite you guys a little bit more about going into the second third of the season, where things start really getting interesting. So let's get it started. From the last 2 years, it hasn't felt like, for me at least, that we've been having traditional fantasy baseball. I've honestly felt like a lot of what makes this league great was taken out. And in the the last 2 seasons encompassed a 9-week complete 2020 season. That was 6 weeks of a season, 3 weeks playoffs, that we really couldn't fully enjoy. I think, as long as this season is in fantasy, we enjoy it because baseball's supposed to be a long season, and it got accelerated. And not to take anything away from the winners of that year, but it just, the camaraderie, being able to manage our teams, everything was kind of taken away. And for me, hanging out with you guys and having a traditional draft day and managing my team on a strategy base, as opposed to like it was in 2020, which was an accelerated season, and then in 2021, where we had to implement COVID rules, we still couldn't hang out. There was a lot of hesitation, especially on my part, in terms of feeling safe. And then we were managing our teams not based on strategy, but kind of whatever we can get for that day, because we didn't know what games are going to be shut down because of COVID. Teams that caught COVID, are they going to be used for us? It was just a lot of the core elements that make this league great. Most importantly, hanging out with each other, and that conversation and the constant fantasy dialogue was taken away. But now, this year, it feels like we are back. Where we left off in 2019 feels like we're right there. And it only seems right that the plans that we had, where Adam just went over the top with Vegas and everything, it only seemed right that he would be the one to bring us back. And that's, where we got into it, right with the winter meetings this year. We actually got to hang out. We went to the Rose Bowl, Jackie Robinson Park area. It was me, Adam, Justin, AJ, David, and Dale. And it just felt like traditional winter meeting. We had Dale on the mic talking about the rules. We had food, we had drinks, just shooting the shit and just getting ready and excited. And it was a great start to bringing back that tradition of our fantasy and what we love about it. And, and like I said, with Adam taking the reins, it only felt right for him to not only plan everything, but to give as much support on it as we could. And he hosted a tremendous draft games. And I put a few polls on the group me just to kind of give me a little bit of an idea, and I appreciate those who voted. But just to give me an idea of the events that we had and certain things that happened this year, your guys' take on it, because it helps me not just predominantly just putting my opinion on this, but brings you guys into the factor if you're not able to do this with me. So the draft games were at Adam's house, and for those who could participate and could be there, was you guys know it was a great time. And those who couldn't, they couldn't. It wasn't because of COVID why they couldn't participate. Joe had just bought a new house. Alejandro was doing his thing. Moy's in Texas, but it wasn't COVID keeping us from enjoying our fantasy draft games. And Adam went beyond what we could hope for. We had some really creative stuff, and it started off with while Adam was prepping, we played a little dice game with David. That kind of got the juices flowing. We did some fundraising. We had every element that makes draft games great, right? From, of course, drinks, the boys. We had a little bit of competition, and it ended with the why we're there, other than hanging out, which is to get our draft order. And it was a long day, but it was a great day. And I put that poll on what your favorite games were, and I knew there was going to be a bias with golf, the putting game, and because we all, the majority of us like golf, that's why I made that one its own, and then I kind of included all the other games in one option, and then I made the basketball one its own because a lot of us love basketball too. I mean, not me as much as you guys, but the reason I like the basketball and the reason I voted for it is after the long day, it kind of brought the energy back up. It was a different style game. All the other games were individual scoring, and this was a competitive one-on-one tournament style, which was just brought the energy, I think, back up. After having a whole day of drinking and playing games, and it's just a long day, but that brought the energy back up. It gave a little bit of competition, and it actually was a perfect segue from shooting baskets to shooting the beer pong cups to determine the order we were going to shoot for our draft picks. And as tradition would have it, the hosting house got the first pick. That's been something that's happened multiple times now. Eric, he owned the year he hosted. He owned Moy's first round pick. Now, depending on the order that Moy got would determine where Eric's second choice was in the first round. And luck would have it, Moy got the first pick. So Eric owned that first pick in the first round. So the host owned the first pick. Then Ray, when he hosted the draft games, he got the first pick, and then Adam got the first pick for hosting. So it's kind of a funny way of like the league thanking the host for doing these great things, and it inspired me to host next year's games. And I already got all the games prepped out, so that's going to be a great time. And again, the draft games was just another opportunity to really enjoy a traditional fantasy league and a great way to kick it off. And that takes us to the draft day. Now, draft day for me is one of the top days, all of our fantasy season. If it's not the best day, you could probably include the trade deadline, the last week of the season, obviously playoffs, but not everybody participates in playoffs. So, I posted on the poll, not getting into too much specific strategy details, but, what I considered key factors that go into having a successful draft. And I think the parts were, did you execute on your first 5 picks? Because for me, if you don't, it's a wasted draft. That's where your big money purchases are for your players. Those are going to be most likely the guys that hold it down for your team, unless you get a late find or reach that ends up panning out. But those first 5 picks are going to decide how successful your team is, and usually, for the most part, that encompasses 3 offensive players and 2 pitchers, you're 1 and 2, or maybe 4 offensive players and you're ace, or in Cardinals' cases, 5 aces. But either way, you know, the draft, well, the first 5 picks is definitely a factor in terms of success. Now, the other ones I put, did you draft a relatively balanced roster? And that's the one that won. I would agree that a balanced roster in the end, if you're at least able to get your 4 solid offensive players and your 1, 2, and 3 pitchers and 1 decent closer or a good closer, that is a balanced roster and that's a successful draft. And that's why I voted for that. I agree. A balanced roster, I think, is the biggest factor in terms of a successful draft. And I threw in a wild card one in there in terms of if you have advantages going into the draft, like a extra draft pick, or in the early draft, if you have if you're able to have trades where you acquired those draft picks. So again, that one had a vote, but I think that's more people basing an opportunity to have a successful draft as opposed to the post results of the draft and how successful that was. So some of my favorite drafts, other than I'm not going to be biased here. And again, if I don't say yours, it's not because I didn't think you had a good draft. It's just something that popped out to me. I really, really liked Dale's draft. His first few picks in the first 8 rounds, excluding, I think, Grandal. He got he had Scherzer, he froze Scherzer. He got his other 2 pitchers in Darvish and Manaea, which is, there you go, you're 1, 2, 3. He got Bryce Harper, which is, obviously the NL Cy Young, the NL MVP, I believe. He got his other starting outfielder, Starling Marte. He's got one of his middle infielders, Carlos Correa and Albies, and he got a corner infielder, which I think is important, in Jose Abreu. I think it's important for me, or the way I look at a team's successful draft, is that if you're able to get at least your 1, 2 pitchers, your 2 corner infielders, and a stud outfielder, you had a successful first 5, 6 rounds. I think Dale did that, which is why it's so surprising to me where he's at. And I think a lot of it has to be bad luck, honestly, but I'm very surprised with how good Dale's draft was, where he's at right now. But again, we're still early on. And a couple other ones that stood out to me. The next one is going to be Ray. I think it makes a lot of sense where Ray's at. He went very offensive heavy, but the pitchers he did pick up were really good. Obviously, he froze Trout. He got Shohei. He got Machado, who's having one of his best years, who we traded. I'm not going to get into that, but just based on draft day, he got Machado, Matt Olson, Carlos Rodon, Kevin Gausman, and Barrios, which is really good 1, 2, 3. And JD Martinez, who I acquired from him on a trade. But regardless, you can't knock those first few picks. Great for me. Again, a big factor is balance and executing on those first few picks. And both Dale and Ray executed on offense and got a 1, 2, 3 pitchers all in the first 7 rounds or first 7 picks. And then the last one for me is going to be Alejandro. I love Alejandro's draft. I think he's another one where he went all offense, but that's okay because the offenses he got are first rounders. Arguably, he got 3 first round players in the first 3 rounds. And he froze Bichette, got Devers, and Acuna. Like, that right there, I think is alone is a successful draft. Um, Pitching is a little, on the fence. I would probably put Moy right there with him, um, uh, because I think Moy had the same kind of thing where he had you know, Guerrero, Betts, Bogarts, Teoscar, and now Zach Wheeler. Great five players, and if Buxton turns it around, and you'll have, that's tremendous. But again, I really feel that, not including myself, Dale and Ray had two great drafts, and they actually represent, both sides of the rankings right now, which is interesting to me. They bookend it right now with Ray at first and Dale on last, which obviously is on course to change if Dale can, hold off this win against David. So, draft day, you guys were able to hang out, a few of you, at the Greyhound in Glendale. And despite going over, a few of you, it was a traditional draft hangout where, again, those who couldn't participate, it wasn't because of COVID, it was other reasons. But we were there, and it just felt like a traditional draft. And I can't emphasize it enough that this preseason encompassed just everything that we left in 2019. Everything that 2020 was supposed to be, I feel we got in 2022. And I feel we're right back in it. And I'm so excited, and I hope you guys are. And again, thank you for participating in the polls, because that really helped me on this. So my next topic I wanted to get into was Frozen topic. We talked about it at nauseum, and I'll admit I stirred the pot a bit in terms of a couple opinions I had on Frozen teams. But what was interesting to me is the one that got voted for in terms of what affects you the most as a Frozen team is the inability to make ads and trades. And I get that from one aspect where, like for me, when I finish a draft, I immediately want to use two ads to bridge the gap of a lack of depth that I couldn't get in the draft. So if I wanted to add another really good pitcher to add to my group, or maybe I'm missing that shortstop, or I'm missing that third outfielder, I immediately use those ads to bridge that gap of depth. And I get why missing out on those top tier free agent waivers is it sucks. It really is a disadvantage. But I was really surprised that not being able to make adjustments on your rosters was one that didn't get votes. All the votes were for the lack of ads and trades. And in trades, we don't really do in the first couple weeks. I think a lot of teams have the mindset where they want to see where their team's at for at least the first month and a half, 2 months of the draft of the season before they start making trades. They start really considering trades around week 9, 10. But again, I can see why not being able to make ads and trades is costly. But a lot of teams came out of being Frozen with I think what 50% of you had either a 500 record or went 2-0. So we definitely need to improve on the number of teams going over. It increased from last year, but again, it is what it is. I guess I don't understand. I have never been Frozen, so maybe my opinion on the matter is definitely missing experience in terms of how the punishment goes, and maybe that's why I brought up the topics I did, and maybe that's why it got so much feedback, for lack of better words, because I don't know what it's like to be Frozen, and apparently the punishment is substantial, and so I totally get it, and props to you guys who came out of that with a 500 record or better and are doing well. props to you guys. So let's quickly go into the last topic. We're coming up on 20 minutes, so we're perfect. Let's look at the recap of the records right now. Let's see. We got Ray in first at 6-1, 5-1. We got me at 5-1, Efren at 4-2, Alejandro at 4-2. In the 5 spot, we got Justin at 3-3, Carlos at 3-3, David at 3-3, Joe in the 8th spot at 3-3, and then we got Moy at the 9th spot at 2-4, Adam at 2-4, and then AJ and Dale in the 11 to 12 spot with 1-5. Again, things are constantly changing. I really look forward to where we're going to be at by week 10. And I kind of brought this up, and this is kind of a little teaser for the next video, which is going to come up the week of right post All-Star game trade deadline. I'm going to recap the trade deadline, and hopefully, we can get someone on. And I think I'll be off work on vacation for that week, so maybe we can definitely make something work where we can get a few of us on and just talk about the trade deadline, and maybe your guys' responses to this podcast and how you feel we're at this year. But I posted this question on the group me. Adam brought up, kind of trying to determine what the record would be for a fire sale. For me, I really believe that 10-9 or even 11-8 is going to determine the 7th and 8th seeds for playoffs. So, considering the trade deadline is between week 14 and 15, after week 14, what do you consider a record that you feel good that you can continue to compete for that 7th and 8th spot? And what record do you guys determine, or a worse record? What record and below do you determine that you need to start playing for next year because you don't want to miss your window of opportunity for the trade deadline and getting draft picks? For me, I think you have to be at least 7-7, because if the threshold for making the playoffs is 10-9, that means you would have to go 3-2 the last 5 weeks, which at a 7-7 record, I think you feel pretty confident that you can do a 3-2 finish. But I think if you're 6-8 or below, if you're 6-8 and the threshold is 10-9, you have to go 4-1 your last 5 weeks. So I really believe that if you're 6-8 after week 14, going into the trade deadline, you need to start getting those draft picks. But that's just me, and I guarantee if I start flipping this script and I start losing pretty bad and I'm 6-8, I'm playing for next year. So you guys think about that. Going into the next video, I hope you guys enjoyed this little audio podcast. I'll have it up soon. And again, appreciate you guys. This is the preseason week up to week 6 first video of the podcast, or audio recording of the podcast. And you guys have a good one. Later, Riz.